The following presentation was recorded at the 2025 Southeast Linuxfest in Charlotte, North Carolina. It is licensed under a Creative Commons license. For more information on the Southeast Linuxfest, visit www.southeastlinuxfest.org. Come join us next June.
Yay, I'm alive. Alrighty. We will go ahead and kick this thing off. All right. I am Mike Ralph. I am a principal technical account management for Red Hat. This should be the only mention of Red Hat because this is not a Red Hat presentation. This is mine. Me and my wife, who unfortunately decided to go to Florida with the kid, could not make it today. So it is just me. This talk is about FreeIPA, also known as IPA, and the last mention for Red Hat, IDM, Identity Management. I will use these words interchangeably because we use them interchangeably inside as well. But this is how, as they put it here, the secret recipe, how FreeIPA serves up zero trust with a side of security. I work in the public sector, and I'm getting a lot of questions from customers, from whether my accounts, other accounts, going, what can Red Hat do for us? IPA. And a lot of their conversations are starting to hint at zero trust. For those that did not know, there is a branch of the government called OBM, Office of Budget Management, OBM, that put out a memorandum in January 22 called the M09 or M2209 memorandum, which talks about zero trust, moving towards a zero trust architecture. And with that, we will go in a little bit of what ZTA is. Who knows what zero trust is? Okay, we got some people here. The evolution, basically how we went from keep out to prove it. Our original model was what they call a castle and moat, which is we have a firewall around us. Anybody inside is safe. We will allow them access to our network. We will allow them to printers, whatever. Yeah, you might have to log into some websites for like ticketing, HR, stuff like that. But as our attackers have grown and have evolved, that's become harder. They have also moved towards, we've enhanced the castle and moat some. Now you need a VPN instead of a dial-up, which if any of those out here remember the dial-up modem banks, yeah, no, or anyone that has ever seen War Games. I mean, come on, he just dialed in and there you are. We're moving away from that. Even though we've enhanced it, it has not helped as much as we would like. So back in, I believe it was 18 or 19, apparently Gartner was the one that came out with the zero trust architecture nomenclature, and it's pretty much will stick. But it is basically comes down to deny all, verify all. So we want to make sure you are who you say you are. Part of the memorandum that came out was we want you to treat your internal networks exactly the way it is on the internet. We want you to verify everything. We want to know which machines are on there. Are they allowed to be on the network? Who the user is, whether it is a person or a service account, however the case may be, we want you to be able to prove who you are. And we don't want passwords. Passwords is one of the biggest hiccups in security because most people, as you can tell, when you look at the year-end list of the most vulnerable passwords, password 123 is always up there near the top. I mean, come on. So CISA, and I have to, can't remember, whatever, you all have seen it in the news lately. They have been decimated here and there. But CISA came up with their perspective of what zero trust is. They have 5 pillars and then 3 items going across it that affect all 5 pillars. We have the identity pillar, devices, so any of your hardware, networks, basically what everything's connecting up to, whether it is hardwired or Wi-Fi, apps and workloads, and of course, data. Now, who knows about IPA? Okay, more people. Yes, it's not going to be that hard. Gemini that we use was great for this. It's like, here's our title, make it funny. And I think it did a pretty good job. Is it a beer, a cult, or just your new identity management overload? Lord. So with that, a little bit about IDM. IDM is basically a domain controller for Linux. It's just like AD is for Windows. What does FreeIPA do? We are central identity management. So part of the memorandum and most people's thoughts is we do not want your accounts on each machine. You forget passwords, you forget to update them, you forget the accounts are there, so when someone leaves, it's just a nightmare. But it does authentication and authorization, so it proves who you are and also whether or not you're allowed on the machine. DNS integration, you don't need to, but we do offer it. A lot of people I know use things like Infoblocks and even AD DNS. We offer certificate authentication services, CA, through through DogTag. Policy management, so any of your sudo rules, role-based access control for the web GUI only, not for your applications or what you're supposed to do on the servers, but for that web UI. So how you manage IDM. That's what your role-based access control is for. And we do host management, host-based access control, who's allowed on what and where. FreeIPA and Zero Trust. Now, this is where something I started thinking about last year was how do we merge these? How do we set this apart from other items, other applications, or just be able to talk to our customers going, hey, here's how we're aligning to our Zero Trust. So I've broken it down into our pillars. Identity, like I mentioned before, all users can access are located there. So inventory through bind or through just when your clients, when the agent registers to IDM, it's there in your host group. There we go. Compliance policies, your sudo rules, centralized sudo. We don't want you to have sudo on local boxes anymore. The HBAC rules. Detection, we do have logging. We do have audit logging within IDM. One of the problems is the way IDM actually works and the way Linux works. You log into your Linux client through, in our case, SSSD. SSSD then puts those logs within varlog secure messages, wherever else you decide to put them through rsyslog. And the only time it reaches out to IDM is, one, if that is not cached, if however they authenticate isn't cached, then it'll reach out. But it will also reach out for, is this person allowed to be logged in here? And if so, what sudo rights do they have? If you've configured it to enable sudo from IDM, it will ask, what sudo rights do they have? Excuse me. Protection, identity and access management tools, MFA, multi-factor authentication. One of the things that everyone is starting to move towards, you've seen the authenticators on your phone. Some of y'all have probably had the old RSA tokens. There's also identity providers, IDP, for those that might not know what an IDP is. IDP is, so you go to a website, it goes, okay, you want to log in, here's, email, user account, but also, do you want to log in using Facebook? Do you want to log in using Google? Do you want to log in using, Microsoft Intra ID nowadays? That's IDP, your identity provider. IDM itself is a service provider. So it's providing the service to their clients. IDP is up there, out of the way. Respond, how do we keep our business operations running? This is kind of a quasi way to go. It kind of lines up with some of what we have with our recovery, our pillar 5. We have Ansible FreeIPA collections. These allow you to configure IDM, whether it's install, configuring, whatever the case may be, from Ansible, which of course, Red Hat. But it does also work with the upstream Ansible version. Yay. So those are our core functions of what we're looking at, what IDM is covering. This is kind of the maturity model. How do we, where are we now? That's our traditional method right here. Then we move up from when we start making our first steps into zero trust, and then we get a little bit more advanced, and then we get to what we consider, well, what CISA considers optimized. So we're moving away from just passwords, or we're getting away from a PIN and token per se. We're talking about moving towards certificates or moving towards identity providers. Because as I mentioned, they want us to start moving towards a single source of truth for our identities. Whether you are using AD, because IPA will do an AD trust. With that, your client talks to AD as the authentication piece. AD will send back a Kerberos ticket if it's correct. It will also reach out to IDM going for authorization. Are you allowed to be here, and what are you allowed to do? Either one comes back no, you lose your session. IDP is a little bit different. IDPs use tokens. Our RHEL clients do not, or actually any Linux clients that I know of right now do not use tokens. They will use Kerberos for authentication. You've got to have that middleman there. So instead of your users living in AD, they're actually living in 2 places. One's in the IDP provider, one's within IPA. There's a mapping between your IPA user and your IDP user. So when you make the first connection, you're connecting to IDM, it's reaching out to your IDP. Yep, this person's there. Here's a URL for you and a PIN. It passes it through to the client. You click on it, you open up your browser, you put in the PIN, and whatever authentication method your IDP uses is what you are using, whether it is just a password, a certificate, authentication, password and PIN and token type situation. It will then respond, if it's correct, back through IPA going, yes, this is correct. IPA then creates your Kerberos ticket and sends it off to the client, then allowing you to SSH, do whatever you need to do, and IDM still provides your authorization. But going from our small traditional moat, castle and moat situation to strictly zero trust is going to take time. It is not something that you do overnight. It is not a one-time project. It is a continual growth, because how do you go from, yes, everyone within our little walls here are approved, to no, you must prove yourself. And it's not just users. How do systems do this? Well, right now, if you're using DHCP at work, you can scan, yep, okay, here we go. Here's a MAC address that is actually good. I'm going to steal it and I'm going to put it on my NIC card, and now I can get an IP address, and now I'm on your network. So how do we do this? As I mentioned before, IPA does do certificates. You can issue certificates to your hosts. Okay. Policy management, because I do ramble on, so allows you to tailor your policies. So host-based access control, who do you allow on these systems? Do you need developers on your production boxes? Maybe not. If your admins or help desks people are the ones that are rolling out updates, your developers don't need to be on your production boxes. They need to be on dev and maybe QA. So you limit them. You can go here, or you can go here. You can't go everywhere. Is this what actually happens out in the real world? No, it's a journey that we have to do. You can delegate IDM, yeah, it says delegate IDM server administrative capacities. As I mentioned, this is your role base. This is what these users can do within IDM itself. So if you are using, let's say, passwords or passwords and one-time password, basically one-time pins, how do you manage those? You don't want your admins always doing it. Help desk can do it. You can give them that role within IDM. So if a person locks themselves out, you follow whatever process you're supposed to. Hopefully not just someone calling up going, hey, yeah, I locked this out. Can you change my password for me? Hopefully there's other verification sitting in there. So this is ways to limit access to the internal network. Yay. MFAs we were talking about before. How do you encrypt stuff? How many ways can you have a person authenticate? Tell them who you are. Something you know, something you have. Basically, for me, I use a YubiKey, but I also have an authenticator on my phones. And yes, I did say phones. This is a way that I have my passcode, PIN, whatever you want to call it. And then I either touch my YubiKey or I look up my authenticator going, yep, here's my code, toss it in there, and it will authenticate me to the network. Smart cards or certificates. If you have ever had one of these little white cards that have, it's basically like a credit card, plug it into your machine, type in your PIN. There you go. You're now on the network, ready to go. However you are using it, passwords, radius, Kerberos, PKInit, hardened password. Well, all your passwords should be hardened anyways. But these are ways of doing MFA, something that is or was supposed to be all implemented in the government sector by the end of 2024. Authentication, as I mentioned a little bit before with the identity providers, it works with Keycloak, Microsoft Entra ID, or what used to be called Azure AD, Google, GitHub, I believe as well. There's always one that I always miss. But you can also, those are just the predefined templates. Any IDP that will give you the URLs that you need can go ahead and be put in place for it. So you just have to fill out multiple lines then. Parting wisdom. Yay. That's why I need her, because she is more long-winded than I am. I talk quickly. How do you start? Where do you start? This becomes a problem for people. Like I said, this is a big project. How do you do this? Little bites. Keep it simple. Also, make sure you have a way to replicate it. So all of your automation, that is another big key of Zero Trust. Make sure you can automate. This way you can repeat this throughout. New systems come up. Run this playbook or run this recipe, however you decide to do your automation. How do we continue to move forward? How do we ensure we are getting towards our end goal of trusting nothing? Yeah. Start off small. Like I said, keep it simple and start to grow. Now, hopefully, knock on wood, actually have questions, because most people will not ask questions. Either I'm that good, that boring, or whatever the case may be.
I definitely do have a question.
Okay.
So I have very recently rolled out IDM in my home lab, just because it's like I need to learn this.
Yeah.
I'm running into just weird stuff, just lack of knowledge on my part. For instance, I have a bunch of Fedora machines.
Yep.
I have a bunch of RHEL 9 machines, and I have a bunch of RHEL 10 machines. I want to make my user part of the libvirt group on all of those, but the group ID is different from RHEL 9 to RHEL 10 to Fedora. What do you recommend? Like, what am I doing wrong?
There are there is ID mappings within IDM to where part of the problem is, yes, we do change our GIDs around from time to time, which does make life difficult. Yeah, it's a feature. And I will say we do have the ability. Well, yeah, we do RHEL and we do Fedora. All of those are our developers for the most part. IDM, IPA is mainly all Red Hat developers. One of the, I would say, few products that's strictly Red Hat developers. Besides for opening up RFEs for it, but it's also when you are installing it, it's then picking them randomly. As far as that is, you can do, I want to say it's the ID mapping view, ID views, ID mappings, to where you can go through and change. Okay, this group is this GID type situation. You can also make a group within IDM and give it a group ID, because you don't have to use what they generate for you. You can specify this group, this GID, just like you can with the user. You can create this UID for this user, and then you can map around.
So if you pre-create a libvirt before you install the virt software, is that what you're saying?
No, because part of it, no, because there you are actually installing it on the machine. IDM has nothing to do with it. You can, at that time, you can either change the GID around, which of course you'd probably have to reboot after that because it's just GID and not name. But that would probably be my way of looking at things. I've not tried to do that per se, because what I will do is I've got my home is using it. Then I have a crap ton of labs. But I've got my admin user, which is basically gives me root, so I just sudo to everything that I need to for that. And then I have a regular user that I use for the little things, because I also, besides for being a SME for IDM within the TAM world, I also do all of platform and Ansible and the soon-to-be security role that's coming out supposedly in July once the SKU comes out. So, yay. And I do a lot of public sector stuff, so pretty much everything that can be stigged is stigged. But I get AAP talking to IDM, OpenShift. I've got talking to IDM. Still fighting with OpenShift Virt. But that's because I've never been trained on it, so I'm picking everyone's brains and going, why isn't this working? So hopefully that's helped some. You can reach out to me, since you, of course, can find me quite easily. And I'll see what all I can do for it. Any other questions? Zero Trust, security in general, IDM. I will answer just about anything I can.
I do have a couple of small questions. For one thing, I know sometimes, in the example of like for Identity Manager, for something like OpenShift will be like Kubernetes plus ads. Is IDM pretty much vanilla FreeIPA?
Pretty much so. The one major difference is, of course, the upstream is always more bleeding edge. That's where more things are being put in. Like IDM is coming up with IDM to an IDM trust or IPA to IPA trust. That is being worked on upstream. It's like all of the products are supposed to do is upstream first and then come back in. Yeah. And then the supportability. So we have to make sure that it can survive 10 years pretty much kind of as is.
That is one thing I did notice when I didn't look at FreeIPA so much as IDM. One thing I did notice, for instance, is at least last time I checked, for instance, it only supports one-way trusts with things like Active Directory, for example.
Okay. That's the same everywhere.
Okay.
The problem with that, it's basically a 90% two-way trust. So if you select a two-way trust, it's basically 90% for things like SMB, those type of services.
Hmm.
Back, I think around 7.3, 7.4 of RHEL. I don't know when that timeline is, but that's the versions that come out for me. Microsoft made a change, and that blew things up. So we cannot have a true two-way trust to where a Linux admin could manage a Windows stuff. That is being worked on slowly. That is part of the IPA to IPA trust. We have to have a global catalog. And so it should not be too far behind of the IPA trust to IPA trust coming out. From what I've heard, it's been probably 6 to 8 months since I talked to the devs about it or the PM about it, which I can wait until she gets home tonight at around midnight and ask her. But yeah, that is part of the problem. It's not us, it's them. We would like to, because we have had those conversations before with customers going, "Hey, we want this," and we're like, "Sorry," but it does do things like services, the Samba, the SMB, SIF stuff. So
Okay. Last question for me is, um, do you know of any recommended like self-managed on-prem identity providers that could connect into FreeIPA?
Keycloak, the upstream version of Keycloak, or the
Okay.
Red Hat build of Keycloak, which requires the EPA SKU, which is money, unfortunately. And I don't think it's that cheap. And just for Keycloak,
Gotcha.
probably best go upstream for that one.
Okay.
But yeah, Keycloak is on-prem, or like anything else, put it anywhere for it. GitLab, I think, does a IDP as well that you could put on-prem, but I have not played with it that far. I've played with it using setting up the identity, the authentication piece, but I haven't done the IDP piece.
I have a question, and I'd like to add on to what are the IDPs you can chuck in your home lab.
Okay.
I tried using the IDP in GitLab and 4Geo and Gitty. They're very basic OIDC providers, and that's it. So like it'll give you an OIDC app, but it doesn't let you do like fancy custom creds or anything. I had a better time setting up Authentic than Keycloak. Authentic is spelled with a K.
Yeah, that's the upstream. I heard about it probably about a month ago. That was they are a kind of like most of your open source companies nowadays. They have their free version, then they have the paid, which is more of, we will help you build your little plugins that you need for this. But I've heard good things about Authentic.
Yeah. The question I have is there like a minimum size where it's practical to run FreeIPA? I had a home lab where I ran it, and after I rolled out an OIDC provider, it kind of seems silly to have 16 gigs of RAM to just put my SSH key and user on every host.
No. I follow the basic rule of RHEL, which was, and I've done this with Fedora as well, which is 2 cores, 4 gigs.
Okay.
And it's run fine. All of my labs run fine with IDP and AD Trust together. I will say we do not recommend running them both together. I've had a customer doing this, and he's using the same username in AD as he's using an IDM for their IDP connection. Problem is your client, depending on how you have the client set up, where's it going to look first? You can set it up for which search domains. Which domain are you searching for first? Well, they're an AD company at the moment, and so they're going to AD, and their IDP thing is failing. Why? You drill down and you find out, oh, here's why, because you're looking at AD first. And plus, they're the same names. Why? You don't have to. And so once they finally got that figured out, oh, just use the FQDN. Don't use the short name. Everything's working for them.
Right. My math came from I ran 2 IPA domain controllers, and for some reason it freaked out once or twice, only having 4 gigs of RAM. I forget why. It was a while ago.
That's interesting. because generally thinking from what they are saying, a minimum setup, like I said, the 2 cores, 4 gigs, um, like 10,000 records, and that's hosts, clients, users, rules, RBAC stuff, HBAC, sudo stuff like that. Generally 10,000 records is fine. So it'd be interesting to know what was going on then, because that to me does not make sense.
And if I looked at all my like metrics for it too, it was consistently under that threshold that you recommended too.
Yeah, I mean most home labs are not going to come anywhere near it. I bumped it once because we were having an issue. Uh, the PM reached out and wanted to find out what performance looked like if you're adding 10,000 users. Actually, no, at the time it was 10,000 DNS records because it was taking forever, which I will recommend. If you decide to do a bulk install of users or DNS records, there is a option within the Ansible collection to use it through the API. Do not do like with items or something like that, because it's making SSH connections for each and every one, which means it's having to re-authenticate back to IDM. And so, yeah, performance and time goes through the roof because all that extra stuff. If you're using API, it's basically a one-time deal. It grabs a token and dumps it. So it definitely reduces time with that. Any other question?
What am I losing out on if I have DNS managed through Blocky, managed through Ansible, and I'm able to pull a secret from a secrets manager to grab like my SSH key and user creds, and I just use Ansible to deploy that everywhere just for my home lab, not at like any sort of company?
Right. Yeah, it's pretty much the same anywhere. If you're using IDM just for username and password or HBAC, IPA will also store your SSH keys. If it's there, it uses them for all of the clients that are connected to it. Also, when you join a client to IPA, if you're using integrated bind, it creates a bind record. If you set up the reverse zone for it, it'll create the reverse record. It will keep track of all that. So if you remove, not delete per se. If you remove it, basically do an uninstall, it removes those records for it. So that's what I would say for that. As far as like password vaults, we do have KRA. Well, it's more like an Ansible vault type thing. I don't even know what KRA is used for. I've only heard briefly of one company using it. I don't recommend it. To be honest, HashiVault, I've heard is great, and I would love to be able to pull that in.
OpenBow is what you should use if you like open source because of HashiCorp's licensing shenanigans. It was a fork and it has a GUI now.
Okay, great.
OpenBow, OpenBAW, Bitwarden also has a secrets manager product too.
Yeah, I like Bitwarden. I've got it. Red Hat itself recommends using Bitwarden over all the other stuff. So, but we do also say, like the X password that comes with Fedora, and I think it comes with RHEL as well. They like that as well. But it's like Bitwarden was kind of like what they dumped on it. One thing I'll say before we get to the next password question, because I believe there was one in the back. Who knows what FIPS is? Okay, we do have some FIPS people. Great. As you probably know, FIPS 140-2 is no longer a thing, is no longer being certified. It is 140-3. The 140-3 puts in post-quantum cryptography, or what we are thinking will be the algorithms for it. Let's see, we're at 3 years ago. When that change occurred during our wonderful COVID period, when they no longer certified FIPS 140-2. There was a change in RHEL 8.7. That is FIPS 140-3. So 8.7 and above is all FIPS 140-3. If you installed IPA at 8.3 and earlier, currently you have to rebuild if you want to upgrade to a newer version that's using FIPS 140-3. The problem is we love to say standards, standards, standards. We follow the standards. MIT Kerberos, which we are based off of, allows multiple master keys or whatever. I don't think they've ever changed the name yet. We only allow one. There is no way for you to rekey Kerberos currently. They are working on that. When? I've been yelling about that for a while now, 3 years. So right now, the only way is to rebuild. The latest versions of IPA does have an IPA migrate option. Well, command to where you can migrate one IPA server to or IPA domain over. So that's an option to get most of the stuff in there with a new Kerberos master key. So it's either rebuild, actually you're technically rebuilding, but migrating or do a full rebuild. Joyce. Question.
I've never used FreeIPA before, so sorry if this is a new question, but you had mentioned that SSSD doesn't reach out if it's cached credentials?
Correct.
Is there any way, I guess, to shorten the time for the cache?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there is a way to shorten the cache life on SSSD because one of the things I was thinking about on the way here is a new talk for one of our internal conferences is like, since IDM IPA is part of RHEL, there's no price to it, even though it is considered a layered product, which a lot of internal Red Hatters salespeople don't know how to sell that product because it comes with RHEL. Oh, it comes with RHEL. Here, use it. And so sales reps, the solution architects that follow them around, I've done over 30 calls with customers. I've done 30 different customers, multiple calls trying to explain IPA, how to use it, what it's used for, what it's good for, what it replaces. One of the things it does not do that some customers like is, I think it's CyberArk or whatever the other C name one is. It will automatically rotate passwords. So the user password to get into the system's the same. They remember it for however long and change it whenever. Or using like a certificate, smart card. And then when it goes out to log into the machines, it constantly changes passwords. Well, with SSSD caching, if I log out of this one machine and go, oh my God, I forgot something, I could try to log back in, it's going to send the other password, fail login, fail login, fail login, locked out, you're done. You then have to either use automation to unlock your password, clean the cache, and start over again, or have someone do it for you. Or in some cases, like one of my customers, they will log in with the Ansible service account and do what they need to do, reset their password in the whole 9 yards, do what they need to do, and then log out. That is something that IPA does not do. There has been, I would say, no real push internally with the developers to do that. Like probably most of the large companies around, resources are scarce. I fight this battle with the higher ups. I've actually been basically told by upper management, shut the hell up. I do not care. I will burn that bridge. We make enough damn money for IBM. We should be able to hire engineers to get done what we need to. I had one product that I had a RFE in for 5 years that they said they were going to get to before they finally did. And yes, I will crap on Red Hat in a heartbeat. I spent 8 years a contractor with IBM. I know how they do business. Don't like it. So, any more questions? We've got about 15 minutes. Yes, sir.
So when you were mentioning the host-based access control, and you can say like certain users are allowed to access certain machines and stuff. When you add a server to the IPA domain, how do you make sure that server is who it says it is, and how does that whole onboarding process work?
Okay. There is an agent. So you install the agent and it gets a certificate from the CA server. And I will say this, there are 3 ways to install IDM. All of them technically have CA installed. One CA-less. You supply the certs and it's all nice, but there's still a self-signed cert between the server and the client. So thankfully. The other 2 ways are basically using a third party, signing CA, or self-sign. Yay. But it's a TLS connection between the client and the server. So, and it's basically, yep, we have the certificates, we're doing the proper handshakes back and forth. So that is the way we're basically determining that that server is who they say they are.
Okay.
Now you could, of course, basically duplicate the server and then basically re-image another one, but then you're still technically on the same server,
Right.
just different hardware possibly.
Gotcha. And last question, are there any gotchas if you're using like an immutable distro like Silverblue, Vazite?
Okay.
Anything?
Yay! Bootsy! I love it. Bootsy, or image mode as we're calling it downstream. Currently, from a server standpoint, it does not install. For those that do not know what Bootsy, image mode, immutable OS is, Silverblue, it's not truly immutable. There always is at least one persistent volume, which is usually /var. Your home is a symbolic link to /var/home. The bugs are in place. I hope it gets fixed soon to do the server install. I don't know about the client. The client might be able to install as long as, actually, you shouldn't need anything else. You have whatever directory structure is permissible. The problem with the server side of the house is it actually talks to the dbus and makes some sort of change or whatever to the dbus, and it does not like that. So besides for coming up with where the directory structure is and making it align with the persistent volume, that's something that they're working on right now. So it is coming. I will say this, one of the things back in the RHEL 7 version of IPA, there was a container version upstream that made it for like 5 or 6 minor versions of RHEL 7 before they were like, no. But they are looking at making IPA itself image mode, boot container, making it an appliance. There are so many problems with, just like with the Red Hat satellite Foreman stuff. With that, you're locked out of doing a DNF update on the system management side, as they like to call it. So that wrapper will then unlock your DNF, will do a full update to whatever versions they have tested against, and then lock it back. For whatever reason, IPA never did that. I don't get it. I don't know why you just can't reach across and go, hey, how are you doing this? So we can do that over here. But they're looking at making it an appliance because too many people will just update the OS and not update IDM. I ran into one customer that I was called in on to take a look at, and it's just like, really? No wonder things don't work. Things are tested at certain levels, and if you start throwing them off, there is a good chance things will break. So Any other questions before we call it? One other thing about the host stuff. If you have a naming convention, you can do, it's on the first page, if I remember correctly, called auto member. You can do this with both user and host, to where if all your web servers start with web, you can drop them into a host group called web. And same thing for production, dev, QA, stuff like that. You can drop them in there. You can also use Ansible to suck that in, if I remember correctly. I have not done it. I have heard of someone doing it, sucking in that information and using that to build their inventories to where they could then do their patching and rolling out. Well, if there's nothing else, I thank you all for joining on this wonderful Father's Day occasion, which my mom has constantly reminded me that, hey, it's Father's Day. Why are they having it there? Whatever. Also, if there's anything I can do better with this, please let me know. This is actually my first time throwing it out to people. It always sounds great in your head until you throw it out. If I need to slow down, let me know. If I need to go faster, let me know. If I need to put in more meat or talk about more meat of things, please let me know. I'm always trying to improve. I do not like public speaking at all, but I love my community. So I decided back in 2018 to start giving back in one way or the other. So this is what I can do, because I don't program. I hack. I take things and rip them apart and do my searches to put them back together. So please let me know if there's anything I can do better. And thank you. Thank you all for joining on this Sunday.